What is up? Welcome back to the Best Ball Boardroom. It is Thursday. We are officially in June. It feels like it's actually best ball summer starting off, even though we've been doing this through the winter, through the spring. It's time. And I'm excited to bring back a repeat guest from last year. We have got no white mode. Don't worry, we're in dark mode. We do not have any IPAs. We are bringing on the director of analytics for 4for4. One of the OGs who's actually been diving into the data side of things for best ball for a while now. And you probably saw in my On the Clock article referenced one of his charts about roster construction, which has been helpful for me in thinking about kind of how can I get a little crazy, get a little unique. But let's bring him on. Welcome to the boardroom, TJ. How are you doing?
Mr. Herzig, what's up, buddy? I'm doing good. As I told you before, feeling a little underdressed. I didn't bring my blazer. I left it in my car, so I'm sorry about that. Otherwise, excited to be here. Excited to talk to you again. Chasing 3 million this year, buddy.
Dude, I love it. Yeah, I mean, it's exciting. And I mean, well, we've been doing this for a while. I know you are. Were you in the MFL streets back in the day, or when did you?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, really early in the MFL streets when we were like, oh, this will be good to use as mock drafts for our redraft leagues.
Yeah, and I mean, like, what? Put $10 down, let that $10 sit for a season. Maybe first place might have been like $60 or something.
Oh yeah, if you could take down your 12-man league. I was just firing off hundreds of drafts, trying to return a nice, turn it into a few $100 come Christmas.
Hey, that's the true grinding. And now we've got $3 million, potentially even $4 million if you somehow can take down regular season and the week 17. But let's wait no further. Let's jump into a draft. I know you said you took the kind of more focused on the data, focused on the research. I particularly liked where you were looking at the roster constructions for the past, because as the drafting has changed, something like Hyperfragile that worked really well in 2020 is no longer as applicable, because if you go Hyperfragile, you're really missing out on wide receivers that 2-3 years ago you could get some value on. What are kind of the key takeaways that you've had from the research that you've done that's going to kind of go into your drafting strategy changes for this year?
Yeah, I think the obvious one is looking at those extremes, looking at the builds that have been very consistently profitable or high advance rate through all three tournaments, and the ones that have just been atrocious that we really want to be avoiding. Because roster construction at this point, like, everybody is pretty privy to like our position allocations in the roster construction ranges we should be in. But those ones to avoid can absolutely sink you, right? So you're not going to win your tournament with these roster constructions, but you could definitely get your butt kicked if you end up like if we look down at those 3-3, 10-2 ranges, like maybe it could work in the right circumstances, but they're not going to be something that we're striving for very often, where these, the 2-6-8 2s, 2-6-7 3s, those should be the backbone of our roster construction. So I'm thinking of roster construction kind of like player portfolios, right? Like we want to be really overweight on these constructions that have been offered the highest advance rates. And then these other ones, like these, I don't know, like a 2-7-7-2 build, that's something that I reserve usually for a 0 RB team. You don't have to be using those a ton for them to be profitable. Like only about 5% of the field is using something like that, or at least over the past few years. Another thing that I'm thinking about is how can we use roster construction to diversify against the field? Kind of think about it like in DFS being overweight on a player, being over or underweight on these builds. You talked about Hyperfragile. You took down BBM1 with a 4 RB build. It got really popular the next year, fell off in hit rate, which led to it falling off in usage. And I think it's going to decline even more. It's probably not a build for running back builds. Isn't something we're going to use as the backbone of our roster construction strategy. But if it's back to the point like in BBM1 where like 6% of the field is using it, even though like Hyperfragile or robust running back doesn't show huge advance rates, when you can get those teams through, they actually perform pretty well in the playoffs, which makes sense, right? Because if you have 3 running backs that were drafted high that made it through, those teams were probably pretty good. So I do think all of these like extreme builds do have some utility. I think they just get kind of lost in they get the ink and they get the clicks because they're fun to talk about, right? I do think they have their place.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. And I mean, for me, when I'm thinking about what's changes this year from like a hyper fragile, I loved hyper fragile in that first BBM because you could actually find value on wide receivers later on. And other people were kind of going for the heavy RB. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to draft a few. I'm going to draft them early, often, and then I can still find value later on. With this new kind of change, so while we're here, I'll pause there for a second.
I'm fine with the chalk here.
Okay. So we'll put Jamar Chase because it's interesting. Like, so these are the latest CTR rankings. McCaffrey has moved down to 4. Some of that built on ADP, some of that's actual projections. But we're talking about hyper fragile. We're talking about the change in the movement of like where players are being drafted. And it's led me to want to go more with the wide receiver early on. Yeah. And if you were to go the hyper fragile this year, you're probably just going to be missing out on too many of these wide receivers. And so that's where that chart that you were showing, I think it shows like the rates for hyper fragile for 4RB really started shifting the other way. Well, if you would have gone 6 wide receivers, 3 years ago, you feel like you would have been missing out because you would have been overdrafting these players. You're missing out on kind of the rest of the talent. That now has become a more viable strategy as if you honestly, actually, it's weird because a pendulum, if you go 6 wide receivers this year, you're not getting as nearly good a wide receivers you got last year. So maybe that doesn't actually work this year. All that to say, the roster construction data is great, but we still need to adapt to this year.
Yeah, and not even just adapting to this year, but I mean, going into every single draft with an open mind, understanding the boards are going to fall differently. The more drafts we do, the more we dig into these numbers, whether it be roster construction, ADP value stacking, like the more we can be set, like it can be second nature, especially during these fast drafts, the more we can adjust on the fly and really understand what we're trying to build within a draft instead of just kind of like either, worst case drafting blindly, almost as bad as going into it with this very rigid idea of how that draft is going to come out.
Yeah, no, I think it makes complete sense. All right, well, welcome everyone that is joining us in chat. It is great to see you. Matt Murphy, I hope you did not make it in because we are not here to stream snipe today. It doesn't matter if you got your blazer on. Stay in your own lane. Stick to your own stacks. Even though that is interesting, the whole stacking aspect has now changed where you could be doing what's most advantageous for your team, getting some week 17 correlation, but now you're actually fighting with someone else for their stack they might be building. What's your week 17 play? How are you kind of treating things?
I mean, it's super important. I know you've talked a ton about this offseason about like kind of trying to figure out how we want to be prioritizing these things. And I think I'm probably, I want my team stacks before I want my game stacks. Just because I think if you fall into a situation where you do have a few more small team stacks and maybe don't get the game stack that you want in 17, you do still have a chance for your team to still kind of hit the nuts, right? Like especially your quarterback stacks, though, if those run pure in week 17, you're maximizing your chances to have multiple offenses go off in week 17. I think that's still a really good thing. But I'm very much prioritizing the week 17 stacks. Like I've been trying to say in multiple 3,000 word articles, which you said in one tweet with your pyramid, so I appreciate that. But I think saying like, having a hierarchy, I think some people might look at the least important, whatever they might prioritize it as, and think that means maybe sometimes you could ignore it. I'm really trying to think of all of those aspects with every pick as much as I can, but I mean, the money's in week 17. I don't know how you could ignore it. You obviously have to run pure all season to get there. But if you think about it in DFS terms, and it's not an apples to apples comparison, I mean, it's a 460 man tournament, right? That's not humongous. You don't need the absolute nuts against 460 people. And if you can hit that game or 2 games that goes off, I mean, you're doing really good in DFS. Our smaller, high stakes tournaments. We don't need the absolute nuts. In the Millie Maker, you do. So if it was a 10,000 person final, maybe we aren't having as many game stacks. Maybe we're looking for smaller stacks, and just trying to hit the absolute nuts in week 17. But 460 teams where we don't even know how many players are active on our roster, game stack can win you the thing, man.
Yeah, no, I hear that. And I mean, I think DraftKings is $10. Large tournament is something like 1,100 or so. It might actually 1,300, but it is a large amount. It's a little over 1,000. And that's where, hey, maybe as you're saying, you do need to be a bit more perfect. Great example with Kareem winning last year, not having Mike Evans, even though he had the Tom Brady, the Godwin. On DraftKings, player had Mike Evans, larger field, really needed to get that more perfect outcome. Okay, we are back. Here we are. We've got all three QBs dropping. We've got T. Higgins. We've got some running backs. It is kind of the choice du jour. What do we want?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you feel about going like those heavy double stacks with T. I honestly don't love this range here. Like, my inclination is to go T and just go hard on this Bengals team early.
I like it. Now, if Mahomes fell to us, is this some time where you're like, I want to grab Mahomes now because of that week 17 correlation? Or is it?
I actually did that in a draft last night. Kind of very similar thing where, especially with like even more so Mahomes than Hurts or Allen, because we can get more Mahomes guys later. Whereas, with Hurts or Allen, it's obviously going to be tough. Tough to really get anyone else, especially where we're sitting at. We're waiting 20 plus picks between picks. There's going to be more KC guys later, but the correlation too obviously is great.
It's fair. There is a lot of question marks right now. I think later on in the summer, I may be more willing to do the Mahomes when we know if Hopkins is there. We have that kind of more clarity. I'm going to take Henry here just because we're looking at this board. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with QBs in this draft. With no one taking QBs in the first two rounds, it makes me think this might be a bit of a sharper room. You also look at the badges. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other red badges, 2 other black badges. This might be a room where we can find some kind of QB value throughout the draft. For me, also, if I grab, I'm more likely to actually grab Kelsey if I have Chase or Higgins, but not both. Because if you think of like
grab Mahomes.
If you think of like week 17 aspects, and you have Chase and you have Higgins, if they're both going to go off, I mean, Burrow's probably having a pretty good game as well. And assuming you can get him later on, I think I want the whole year of that correlation.
Sure.
But if I only have the Chase or the Higgins, I think that's where you're actually maybe even getting a little unique build if you're going with one of those and Kansas City. As you said, you can still grab a lot of those Kansas City pass catchers later on. Just interesting things we've got to think through that we don't have like the clear answer.
Yeah, I think obviously you put a lot of draft capital into Cincinnati offense already, and I think people get really nervous about that. I think that we still have just so much bleed over from a redraft mindset in this tournament mindset. Like, how do we get there? How does it work? How can this play out? For if it's already hard for a team, an offense to get you there multiple weeks. But I mean, what's more likely to happen if you're thinking about like offenses you're going to invest in? Like Jamar goes off one week and T goes off the next week, or a wide receiver one and then some random wide receiver goes off the next week 16, 17 back to back. I think it's way more likely that a Jamar and T go off as teammates back to back than Jamar and their wide receiver 4 or whatever.
Yeah, no, definitely hit that. Taking a look at what's going on elsewhere in this draft. So you have Alex Berg going with Devonta in the second, getting Hurts to fall to him. You've got Calm As You Like going Kelsey, passing on Kelsey to grab passing Mahomes and getting Mahomes in the third there. And then we've got a naked Josh Allen falling to 30. I have not done too many BBMs, but this is what we were kind of thinking was going to start happening with these QBs falling. I don't know if this is a bit more of an outlier. I think it's interesting. And when you start seeing more of this happen, you're like, crap, I can go Devonta first and get Hurts. I can skip and grab Olave and then still maybe get Mahomes. Like, that's a really attractive team. And to know others are getting that, if you're reaching, it's a strong argument for letting things fall.
Yeah, Sam Hoppin over at 444 has done some research on early round quarterbacks, and the quarterback position as a whole has dropped a bit over the last couple of years with us going these super elite quarterbacks. As summers progressed, they've especially the top 3 or 4 guys have had slight dips, maybe like a round in ADP from say June or late May by the time we get to August or September. So that's pretty on par with the trends. And he also did some simulated some seasons with those early round ADPs of the quarterbacks, and what he found is basically like, the upside is obviously still huge with these guys. The opportunity cost of taking these guys in round 2 is probably too steep. It's a blanket statement. Obviously, it's case by case, but second round quarterback's probably too steep.
Yeah, and it's, I'm in the opinion that I am willing to do it if it's a team stack. Because you accept in that situation, you're probably giving up a little value, but you're getting that range of outcomes that this team is a top 1, top 3 passing offense. And then even though like you gave up the value, it still works really well for you from a roster construction.
Absolutely.
Starting to do them naked, Fakir has a tough decision. Like, Josh Allen is naked here, but like pick 30 for Josh Allen is also pretty good value. Like, that's a tough choice.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't. A guy like, I would say the top 4 guys, if they fall, a half round or more, and I'm gonna have to, I might have to scramble later to stack them. It's probably worth it for me. And given the opportunity, like the flexibility of going early round quarterback, early round tight end, knowing you're probably going to come away with just 2 at the position. It does give you more flexibility in the draft. So that is, that can help you in these later rounds, especially in fast drafts where you can kind of sometimes find yourself scrambling. If you are someone that, isn't firing off hundreds of drafts and, if you're doing 10 fast, you're not used to, changing your mind on the fly. Some of those subtle things like giving yourself more flexibility can help you out.
And there's a lot of arguments for these 3 QBs being taken. All right, let's go back here. We have Burrow falling to us. So we'll at least put that in the queue. I think
you pretty much have to when it falls that perfectly.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we're going for, right? In that spot.
If you had like someone here you absolutely loved that was really falling and you're like, no, I really want to get that ADP value because you're scared this person's going to take it. Like, you can take a chance, but I don't think it's worth it. Especially when, in my mind, rankings wise, ETR, we have Kenneth Walker ahead of these other 2 ADPs. These are mostly wash picks for me.
Yeah, I agree with you in terms of the tier, and Henry is kind of that tier break for me where I feel like I can probably go with some kind of like pseudo hero RB, even though we took him in the 3rd.
Yeah, no, agreed. However, I am not drafting any Najee Harris, but
no, I don't like the running backs here.
Even though, so we're getting a round of value on Najee Harris, and in my mind, there's not a wide receiver. Like, I'm at least going to put this in the queue.
Okay.
This is a tough one. I agree with you. Normally,
this is a tough spot.
Maybe I could have talked myself into Hawkinson, probably.
Yeah. I think
that's ugly, but do you just take the ADP value?
Yeah, I probably go Hawk there most of the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so let's think if we would have gone Hawk. If we would have gone Hawk, we would have had Burrow, Henry, Chase Higgins, Hawkinson. We're strong at tight end. Maybe we try to grab like an Irv Smith later on. Either way,
us force 4 Bengals, which is okay. What's your actually? That's interesting that you brought that up. Like, how do you feel? How heavy are you stacking offenses?
Yeah, so Leone's research showed that 1 to 3 pass catchers is the right level of stack. Now, granted, that's a very wide range. I'm also okay with bringing in a running back, even if it's not a pass catching running back, because there is team correlation across the entire year. If a running back is doing well, that QB is probably also doing well. And then come playoffs, I gave this example on one of the recent established run pods. You could have Damian Harris. Damian Harris goes off for 3 touchdowns in week 16. None of the other offense gets any TDs. Damian Harris advances you, but if you also stack your team with Josh Allen's and Stephon Diggs, maybe now you've got a lone stack there, or vice versa, 16 and 17. So I'm okay with that. One note I'll say, though, is if I'm drafting Chase and Higgins, I'm more likely being content and saying, hey, that's all the Cincy stacks I'm going to go. I'm not grabbing Tyler Boyd here.
Right.
If I draft Daniel Jones, I am willing to go with 3, even 4 of those pass catchers, because if Darius Slayton and Isaiah Hodgins are both being drafted pretty late, if one of those ends up having a Zay Jones type year, it is a huge hit, and you don't care that the other one is dust.
Yep.
You're just making a bet. Or you're making a bet that Wan'Dale Robinson doesn't actually play, that one of their other Darren Waller, actually doesn't make a big difference, and they go more of the wide receiver pass heavy offense, and both of those can exceed. Let's go back to the draft board.
No, I'm on board with that. I mean, I think I pretty much agree that it's like a lot of things. It's a draft capital thing, right? Those single QB stacks. I do like the idea of throwing running backs in there with that kind of concept, like you said, with the Bills. The passing game gets you there, and the running game wins it for you, or vice versa. I think people are probably be a little more trepidatious about quarterback, running back, wide receiver stacks, or quarterback, running back, pass catcher stacks than they will just be thrown to throw on multiple pass catchers. So, hopefully when you do get your teams to the playoff rounds, it gives you some level of uniqueness. Hopefully your Burrow Chase teams. Hopefully there aren't a lot of Burrow Chase Mixon teams, and you're one of the few with the Mixons that get through, things like that.
Yeah. A lot of times when I look at the draft board, I notice hey, this team is an interesting one. Obviously you see some that eventually oh, that's a bad team, or this one went 5 QBs or whatever. But at this point of the draft, especially when I know someone who okay, I'm going to use JGFC as an example. Drafted with JGFC many times. JGFC is in the chat as well, and seeing he started off with Justin Jefferson, Josh Jacobs, Breece Hall, both completely fine picks. And then we knew what wide receivers were available here. It was tough. So he went with the Gibbs, Kenneth Walker. I presume he's going to try a hyper fragile build here. It's going to be interesting to see what this turns into, because his running backs obviously are fantastic, and he actually got really good values on both of these. Great value in Gibbs, right at ADP on Kenneth Walker, but ranks-wise, we have that as a closing the line potential value. It'll be interesting to see how he, lands this.
Yeah, and going back to our Derrick Henry pick, we get Houston in 2 of the 3 playoff weeks. So let's not forget that.
We get that
30 in both of those games, obviously.
And as Jerry told us, we also get Najee 2 games versus Cincy. We're getting some sneaky correlation there. But we got Treylon Burks coming up as a wide receiver, which could give us a little correlation with Tennessee. We've got Deontay Johnson with the correlation with Najee. 2 teams that we're kind of making bets on. Okay, there goes Treylon. We got Goddard at the top here. We are probably need to invest in wide receivers would be my inkling. Deontay correlation. Is there any other argument here that you'd be pushing for?
No, I'm not too strong on these guys in this range. I mean, I like Gabe, but he still probably makes it back to us.
Okay, I think JGFC will probably go Addison from a purely ADP standpoint. I presume he's going to grab at least 1 wide receiver here. Let's go Deontay. We're making a bet on the Pittsburgh offense. We can keep an eye on maybe some Seattle guys later on. Yep, there goes Addison, Pickens. Now, some people would be like, hey, Pacheco, bring back to our Cincy, but I think we need wide receivers. You mentioned Gabe Davis.
I like Gabe a lot here.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to have, even when some values fall to me, if I start like this at this spot and maybe even the next one, I'm going to have a really, really hard time passing on wide receivers now that we started like this.
Yeah. And we talked about hey, this is a room that was letting QBs fall. what often happens there is if they're falling early, people let them fall later on. If you look here, Trevor Lawrence is falling as well. Already a round of value. Somebody's probably going to scoop up a decent value there. Leone and go for it.
That range is like crazy to me. And I think it's kind of I think this whole middle range probably falls a bit. Like the gap between T-Law and Watson is crazy. Like we never see 2-round gap in quarterbacks. So I actually think like if you like Herbert, Trevor Lawrence, I don't know, call it, I guess the QB2 or QB2.5 range. I think if you wait a few weeks or a month, like you're going to start getting them a lot cheaper.
Yeah, it's tough because both those guys are so often being correlated with their wide receivers being drafted above. Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. You can even throw in the running backs of Eckler and Etienne. And so that's what's definitely, holding them up, I would say. What I agree with you in that what could keep them falling is as people realize how dead that wide receiver dead zone is, people are like, I'm going to grab another wide receiver here, and maybe I'll just wait for Deshaun Watson in the dead zone. I'll wait for Dak or Daniel Jones in the dead zone. I think that's a viable strategy.
Yeah, and I would say this is like when I start getting to this point of the draft, when we start inching towards around 8 or 9, is when we kind of talked about like what are we thinking through the draft? How are we adjusting? Like we already have a really good idea of what our roster construction looks like, right? Like this is going to be a 2-quarterback.
1, 2, 4 now.
Yeah. So this is going to be a 2-quarterback team with 2 running backs in the top 50 picks. Like at the very most, it's a 6 running back team, probably a 5 running back team. And this is the type of start where it gives us the flexibility and the extra roster spot where we can go 3 tight end, which is, I like to go 2 tight end when I can, but this is probably going to be a 3 tight end build, and it's very extreme. Very rarely happens, but we have seen it's used very sparingly. We've seen late round 4 tight end builds have pretty consistent advance rates.
I was going to bring it up when you were saying maybe not even a 3. I'm thinking, what about 4? This is the kind of structure that I often can start considering the 4 tight end build. And what we can do is take a look, because I know you put out a link to the tool earlier. I think like in the past couple days or a week or so, but I was using that. I can show it on here, the 4for4 tool, but playing around to see like when do those 4 tight end builds work. And if you look at the data, it's decent to good. It's a little above advance rate. If you actually start going down to like only drafting them in 4 of the last 5 rounds, it gets up to like quite high. We're talking like low 20%, mid 20%, even depending on how you're doing it. And what I saw was that, so I know in your chart, you showed that 2.574 was actually a little higher advance rate than 2.664. When I actually isolated for doing the 4 tight ends in the last 5-6 picks, 2.664 actually really came out on top. Now, a little of that is the bias of people who are only doing 6 wide receiver builds are the ones who were going wide receiver very heavy, which was a strong build last year based off who you were taking and avoiding. But I do think there is still some logic. This one, because we went the running backs, feels more like a 2.574. But we'll play with the draft. I never go into a draft saying I'm going to do 4 tight end, because it's more of, if no tight ends fall to me, if I get an elite or a strong 2 QB build, if all the other pieces come together well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll start the rant and wait until if we get on the clock. But yeah, I mean, like I said, this is just kind of the point where we want to be thinking about these things, right? We want to have a plan for the draft.
We are in wide receiver dead zone.
I mean, Juju does give us Gabe correlation.
Okay. I like that. And I think Juju is a tier above these other guys in my mind.
I mean, Juju can still have, I mean, ADP wise, he's a tier up. I think projection wise, he's probably like out of this tier. I mean, if we look at all the pass catchers, even Evan Ingram, his target share could get ugly. Like at the very least, we could make the target share argument for Juju right now.
Yeah.
Big slot guy. That's what they used a lot last year. So he's going to step right back into the big slot role that the Patriots used last year. So I mean, yeah, Juju's not sexy, but he's fine. He fits. We're going to be wrong a lot anyway, so we got to take guys we don't love.
We are.
I mean,
I think we gotta fade the wide receiver here. It's just too ugly. I'm good with Ingram. Frymuth gives a little more correlation, but we'd have 3 pieces of the Pittsburgh offense.
Yeah,
5 seconds. Are you good with Ingram?
Yeah, I'm okay with Ingram. I would consider Robinson here, but Ingram does give us like we because Ingram is still kind of in this like mid-tier range, it does give us some flexibility with what we want to do with our tight ends. Like, if for some reason we feel like we need to stop with fewer tight ends than we thought, I think Ingram's probably you could tell yourself a story where Ingram can fit into a 2 tight end build.
Yeah, no, I agree there. So I'm gonna go back to the JGFC we were talking about. So first off, I actually thought we were going to be able to get Dave Montgomery back to us because he had those 4 really strong running backs. Did not expect this. Also, I expected him to grab Cousins because he's got both Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. If you don't grab Cousins there, he's highly likely to fall back to him. So I thought there was a decent chance we could grab Juju and we'd get Montgomery falling to us. And I think I would have been okay with Montgomery saying, okay, 3rd running back, leaving ourselves even a possibility of a hyper fragile now, most likely just grabbing 2 running backs very late because we'd be getting good value on David. But I'm okay with the way things turned out grabbing Ingram.
Yeah, if we had not taken Najee, I'm auto-clicking Demont there.
Yeah, I agree with that.
He's like, I mean, out of this whole, I don't know, 18 pick run, like 9 a full round either way, maybe even 24, like Montgomery's probably going to be my most owned guy in this tier.
Yeah, I'm looking right now. I think we have Montgomery. Pulling it up. Underdog ADP is 87.1. ETR has him 72. So that's about a round and change ahead. And that I was also accounting for ADP being baked in. So another team is very high on him. Let's do a little 2v2. If we didn't go Najee, who would we have gone?
Well, that's like that was a pretty gross spot, to be honest. That's a really tough range. Like that is kind of a close your eyes and click area for me. And when I get in that position, those kind of spots, I'll kind of default to the positions. I think we're coming up on the clock.
Yeah, we are. Good call. All right, we are on the clock. Okay, wide receivers, running. We really have our choice of what we want to do here. I think we need to lean towards wide receiver. I'm going to put some guys in here. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't mind Zay with Ingram. I do not like Rondale right here. I know you guys, I think you probably have him there because you guys might have him ranked a little bit higher. But I want to take Rondale pretty far past ADP.
Okay. Here's the thing. It's 158, even though that's where the ranks say, and that's obviously because Hopkins there, expecting Rondale to play in maybe not all too wide sets because you're going to he's not the big guy like Michael Wilson, but I'm still above. I'm still not going to reach 2-3 rounds on him.
Can you show me what running backs look like here?
Yeah. Elijah, Khalil, McKinnon. This could be a McKinnon for the Cincy.
Yeah. I love that.
I'm going to run through the others just to make sure.
Goff Wilson. Pickett's not horrible. You could wait on Pickett.
We can hold off and Pickett for a while.
Yeah.
Nico, Mooney, and then tight ends. I think McKinnon makes the most sense for us.
Yeah, if we passed on Ingram, I for just from a player take perspective, I probably take Chig there a lot.
Okay, talk me through that.
He showed some elite traits on a definitely on a limited snap and target basis, but led all tight ends in yards per route run among guys with at least 40 targets. That group has been exclusively top 2 players in yards per route run. Andrews, Kelsey, Goddard, Kittle over the last 5 years. So to break into that tier gives us, some indication that he could be a very good tight end. And then the obvious thing is very limited target competition there. Treylon Burks, and then pretty much nobody else. Obviously, a team that probably isn't going to throw a ton. But Chig, given that those early indicators of possible elite pass catcher with target opportunity, I like him a lot in that tight end tier.
I like that. He's definitely a wide range of outcomes because we know he has the talent. And as you said, when he's run those routes, he's earned his targets, he's earned his yards, he's looked good. Then I have like Josh Norris on one side of my shoulder who's saying like, he's going to block more. He's not a full-time tight end, even when even if his high routes run like success metrics. And so are we just drafting a tight end who is not a full-time player on a very bad offense? I hear that as well.
Once we get past like Ingram, like that's almost every tight end, right? Like we're, so the caveat there is probably that no matter who, if I would have taken any tight end here, it would have been all these are going to be 3 tight end builds at this point if I would have started now.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I think the challenge becomes so in the past 2 years, we have seen 3 out of the top 6 tight ends were all late draft picks. So 2 years ago, that was Dalton Schultz, that was Gronk, that was Knox. This past year, it was Taysom Hill, it was Evan Ingram, and someone else in chat.
Does Taysom count? Can we count Taysom though?
I mean, he was a very late tight end, and honestly, if you're talking,
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying, though.
But so what I was getting at is 2 years ago, the commonality where they were all tight ends on great offenses. You had Dallas, who turned into one of those pass heavy. You had Buffalo, and you had Tampa. Then, if I'm thinking about this year, how to project that, does Dawson Knox at 176 make more sense? Where he's the opposite of Chig. He doesn't have the talent. He's not from going to get the yards after catch or even the yards per route run, but he's attached to a very good offense. It's tough. It's tough.
My first thought when Buffalo drafted Kincaid was, where does Knox fall and how much do I end up drafting him?
Yeah. 176 is more than I would have imagined. Because I think he was probably 120 before this.
Yeah. I think he was basically going where Kincaid was going.
Yeah, which Kincaid's 116 or something right now.
Yeah.
Let's see. There we go. 119. Yeah, it's crazy. So I've gotten a lot of Dawson Knox, and the thesis there being attached to a very strong offense. And I have more confidence in that offense is going to be successful with Josh Allen than the role of what Dawson Knox and Kincaid are going to be. So let me lean into that this offense is going to do well and say, hey, I'm willing to kind of take the variance of whether or not Knox has a minor role, even on a game-by-game basis. Okay.
Until Nuke signs, and then we could just throw it all down the drain.
Hey, Hopkins at this point in his career, he hasn't always been a huge touchdown weapon. Maybe it'll be increased a little more this way. Gosh, I need these old vets to sign. Running backs, Hopkins, all of them. Give us that information.
Now that you say that, I'm auto clicking. Well, that's not true about Zeke. I'm clicking Fournette and Hunt a lot right now, just for the ADP value. Almost no matter where they sign, they're gonna rise in ADP.
It's Julio Jones last year. Okay.
I'm fine with. I like your boy Rondale here.
I'm good with that too. We'll take the Rondale. He is a position of need.
What's quarterback looking like?
We got Russ, Carr, Pickett. We can always grab really late. We're setting ourselves up with a late New England, a Pitt. All right, so we'll grab Rondale here. Could even go Kyler. I don't love that because we're only going 2 QBs.
Yeah, I don't like Kyler for that reason as well.
Pickett's probably the one that makes the most sense here.
I mean, once we get like,
Not
let's say
this pick.
around,
I'm saying in general. Yeah.
okay. I was gonna say like round 14 is kind of where I'm not so worried about ADP.
Yeah, I mean, you can get a Russell Wilson round of value, but we don't have anything going there. Irv Smith for the correlation, and our second tight end, Tyler Higbee's just a substantially better play.
Yeah, I mean, I like Higbee as a standalone play, to be honest.
Okay. And because, as we said, we've already invested a lot of draft capital into the Cincy team, and Ingram and Higbee, I'm honestly okay with that being my two tight ends. If in round 18, 17, we find another guy that we want, I'm fine with that too. But the way that Higbee is used as a full-time player, probably the number 2 pass catcher in that offense, he's giving you the decent enough steadiness, and Ingram's supposed to give you the spike weeks.
Yeah, I mean, Higbee's just not going to be somebody that people are going to be excited to talk about. I mean, he, outside of Cooper Kupp, like, you know, I know people are already talking about what is it, Koopa? Is that how you say his name? Talking about, you know, but I mean, Higbee's going to be on the field. He's going to get a fair amount of targets. I mean, look, tight end's bad. If your tight end in best ball is giving you a live 7 to 10 points, like that's not the worst thing ever. Especially I mean, it's probably too early in this draft to like be talking about this, but this early in draft season, like if we can avoid zeros on our roster, we're kind of ahead of the field, even if they're not sexy home run picks.
Yeah, no, I feel that. Appreciate it, Drew. Hit that like button. I'm always horrible at that kind of stuff. Yeah, no, I hear that. Okay, I think it's time we start considering QB, just kind of game planning for what we may want. If we look at the team right now, so very late Tennessee, we've got the Pickett with the double pit aspect. Go Mac Jones.
Yep.
Could go Kyler. Could go Stafford. Stafford's not a bad one as well. So Stafford and Pickett are kind of the two that rise to the top for me right now. I'll throw those. Any sneaky ones that are kind of week 17 or late stacks that you're thinking about? We currently have 7 wide receivers.
That's what I was going to ask you, like what your like bail yourself out stack is. Right here, I would probably like, if I had to go bail myself out stacks here, I'd probably go like Stroud with a Houston pass catcher with Derrick Henry on the team.
Okay, I would go Bryce Young. Oh, yeah. I was thinking we got Jacksonville. So either the rookie QBs, Bryce Young or CJ Stroud would work. Stroud probably actually makes a little more sense because we've got the 2 games against Tennessee. Sure. But yeah, we also have Zay Jones and Evan Ingram. So if we wanted to go with the Carolina Bryce Young, let's see. We don't really need another tight end. So from a wide receiver's pass catcher, it kind of would be a naked Bryce Young, which I don't love.
And what Texans pass catchers are still available? Is Nico still going?
Most of the time, Nico's probably the only one that's gone.
Yeah. Okay.
You got Woods, Mechie, Dell are the 3 that I have kind of been drafting.
Yeah. So. Yeah, none of the options are great. I would definitely prefer Pickett or Mac Jones. But if I was scrambling, I wouldn't hate either of the rookies just because we got the correlation already.
Yeah. What are you doing with Kyler this year? I don't think he fits for us with a week 7 bye week for Burrow and only going 2 QB, but just in general.
I'm probably not going to have a lot of him. I probably like him more with super elite quarterback than like try to salvage a 3 quarterback. Like if I have one of the top 3 guys and just hope I can ride them until Kyler comes back, I'd almost rather do that than throw him into just some random late round build.
Okay. And so what's the thought process there? Because that's counterintuitive. I would have thought the opposite.
I want, if I'm going like late round quarterback, especially with the money in the regular season. Like, I want all three guys to give a chance to like Frankenstein me, some of those elite guy weeks
Okay.
where with the top guys, like, hope they just have the absolute nuclear season and then get the late run from Kyler.
I like that. I think the regular season thing definitely makes sense. I was actually thinking Devin Singletary could have been nice with the Houston, Tennessee. Do we just take Pickett?
I think so. Yeah, I think you go Pickett here.
I think so. We're making a bet
Can you
that
show
Pittsburgh offense is going to go for it. What do you want?
Can you show me the running backs?
Yes. Running backs, we got Jeff Wilson, we got the vets, Chuba, Foreman's, the ADP value. Jerome Ford's been rising up. I love Edwards.
Actually,
well,
love this. I love this tier of running backs, actually.
Okay. We only have 3 running backs. So wide receiver is Renfro Samuel, which no correlation immediately. And we have 7 wide receivers. So we'll probably want one more. Probably looking at 2 more running backs. So maybe we grab one in this tier.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite?
Not like, honestly, I'm probably just looking for correlation aspects in these.
Yeah.
Jeff Wilson and Deonta Foreman, like 3-headed backfields, but like teams that run a bunch, one explosive, one just pounding the ball.
Yeah, I like Wilson and Ford here.
Okay. I like Wilson. Maybe we can get it Ford later. Who knows? For me with Wilson, I think as well, like, I personally believe that Raheem Mostert and Devin Achane are like the same prototype. I mean, I think that's like the chalk answer for, hey, speed, more explosive back. And so if I expect one of those to, really dispel the other, it'd be Mostert hurting. However, I've gotten pushback from the ETR channel, from the ETR Slack guys of Wilson's only really been a valuable player when he's the only running back healthy. So that's like scared me a little. But again, it's pick 170. You're really just hoping that at some point like this becomes a 2-headed backfield instead of 3. And the team is good enough that Wilson's going to get some TDs.
Yeah, and I mean, we're not going to project Wilson well no matter what in this setup. But, I mean, I don't like the 3-headed monster either, but it's super ambiguous on an offense that should be very, very explosive, but also on an offense where we don't have, like, nobody's drafting their third pass catcher, right? So if all of the Tyreek Waddle teams get there, like, who's most likely to ruin their playoff or championship weeks? Probably one of the running backs, right?
Yeah.
Not one of the random pass catchers.
No. Either the team just busts or something happens on the ground. Yeah. Agreed. All right. Where do we stand right now? We're good at QB, Burrow and Pickett. Running backs, probably want to grab one more running back that is not a bye week of week 10 to give us 2-5. Tight ends, I'll go to first. Ingram, Higbee, feeling good there. Maybe.
I can go either way on tight end.
Okay. And then wide receivers. So it's either we're kind of locked into 2-5. And so then it becomes a 2-5-8-3 or 2-5-9-2.
Mm-hmm.
Which 9, when we went wide receiver to start the draft, is a lot. So maybe it does make sense to kind of go for the 2-5-8-3.
I lean 2-5-8-3 here for a lot. A lot. Especially, like I said again, like this early in the season. I mean, I guess we're in June now, but it's still pretty early. There's still starting tight ends to be had at the end of drafts. And they can still be used in the flex. And those non-dead roster spots are important. And I think we're probably more likely to get them with tight ends right now.
100% agree. I think there are 2 tight ends that also from a correlation work well for us. So Hayden Hurst and Noah Fant.
Yes. I was hoping you'd say Noah.
Put those 2 in. I mean, Noah, because we went with the Pitt stack. We've got 3 Pitt. So Seattle's that week 17. We've got 2 Jacksonville and a Hayden Hurst up there. Hayden Hurst full-time. Actually, there's a question of what a full-time tight end is on Carolina.
Yeah.
Do we feel really strongly there, or do we want to grab one of these wide receivers first? Maybe like Robert Woods.
I really hate Robert Woods.
Okay. You want to do Noah Fant?
Yeah.
Okay. I can tell you like Noah Fant. I think it works for our stack, so we'll grab Noah first. The Robert Woods is more of the kind of Tennessee bring back aspect.
Yeah.
Chicago, Atlanta.
Yeah. It does work. I mean, again, like I do look at these correlations as kind of my outs on my player takes, if that makes sense. Like I'm going to be wrong a lot. So when can I make up for players I don't like? Like it kind of is the spots that I hope that my blind spots save me with those stacks. So yeah, I mean, it does make sense.
Let's go with Gus Edwards. Assuming JGFC doesn't grab a sixth running back, I have Gus Edwards like a tier above these others from just a role standpoint. And then now we're just going to be grabbing a 8th wide receiver in the 18th. We don't have to go Robert Woods. We can figure something out.
Yeah, I mentioned I like that tier. I like Gus. I'm taking him. I'm taking Hunt. I'm taking Fournette. Hunt. I think Hunt and Fournette probably move up once they sign. Gus is probably going to stay there, which is the only reason I've been taking the unsigned guys a little bit more, because I do think they spike. But if and when they sign and they move up, I think I'm taking Gus all the time here.
Yeah, I think from a closing line value, I agree that those other running backs are more likely to finish ahead. There is a risk of they just don't sign little Will Fuller action or something, and they're dead. There's that dead zero. For me with Gus Edwards, I just don't understand why he is being drafted where he is. I mean, a couple things that come into play here is the team has a history of not wanting to rely on just one individual running back. Yes, new offensive coordinator with Todd Monken there, so things could change there. J.K. Dobbins is obviously a better talent than Gus Edwards, but the team has shown a willingness and like to rely on Gus Edwards as being a key role player there. If you looked at the little note that showed up on the Gus Edwards that he renegotiated his contract, it's heavy incentive laden. And to me, what that says is like they could have cut him if they wanted to, saved even more money, but them actually negotiating that contract, keeping him in, tells me that like he is going to be a part of that offense. And so we saw, he could get. He had a few games, I realized it was 2 years ago when he was healthy, where it was like, 12 rushes, 84 yards, and a touchdown, just because of how highly efficient that offense is. And when you have to worry about Lamar, the rushing game can get loose. I don't know why he's so far behind J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah, I want to say there was a hot second where people were like, are we losing Lamar rushing upside because Gus was getting so many goal line touches?
Yeah. I don't know. And like it's not like Dobbins or Gus. It's not like, one of them catches all the passes, because there aren't that many actual targets for running backs in that offense.
Are there any like just random 18th rounders that you have like strong player takes on that you're taking a lot at the end, or are you almost always looking for correlation first before your player takes near this late?
Yeah, for 18, I'd say it's correlation, but honestly, it's probably more positional take. I'm taking a tight end in round 18 so often. And when we get to like July and August, that'll switch, especially August. August is when I go running back in round 18 a ton, because two things come into play. One is we have more ideas of what a unique play is, because we've seen who has and hasn't been drafted the whole time. So Travion Williams goes by Alex Berg right there. Travion, there's a risk he's a 0. There's a risk that like we just don't know what his role is. Yeah. If in August we get an idea that Travion is going to be like the number 2, or at least like in splitting, whatever it is, he jumps a couple rounds, but we at least, we have an idea of has he been being drafted. If we have someone, I don't know, let's say Chris Evans. Chris Evans not drafted the entire time. Come August, we find out he's the number 2. You can now get a low-owned person who's only being drafted in 5 to 10% of BBMs, and we have increased confidence that they're going to have a role. Give me the tight ends now that are starters. I mean, Jelani Woods, the starter. Noah Fant, starter. Gesicki with Henry. Mayer with Hooper. Tyler Conklin's probably the primary. Like, these are guys that, if you're compared to who else is around, we're not even sure if these guys are, if the other ones are going to be on the field. Will it Tim Patrick or will it be Mims? Will Nathaniel Dell at his, 160 pounds or whatever? Who go, like, I don't know. That's why, for me, it's give me the position and then the correlation.
Yeah, and that lines up like with what I was saying earlier about not taking the zeros. So I probably screwed us a little bit clicking Fant there. But yeah, for the most part, I agree with you. And it's always a little, when we're streaming and talking, it's always a little tougher to be on your toes as good as you might be in your regular fast draft. But I do like, yeah, early, we've brought it up a couple times. Early in the draft season, those guaranteed starters in the last round are awesome.
Yeah, I think we, with very high confidence, could have gotten Hunter Henry with this 215 pick.
Yeah.
And that would have been with the Juju and with the did we get him? Oh yeah, Gabe Davis. So another piece of correlation there, and you're almost confident you can, grab him there. Otherwise, Hayden Hurst still falling, Hunter Henry, Zach Ertz and Trey McBride actually become a little more attractive with Hopkins leaving. I think Jake Ferguson is going to be the number one tight end in Dallas. I think Shoemaker is going to be more of a blocker, the reports I've been seeing. So many even decent upside guys in this group.
Would you still go for tight end here?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I think
this flies in the face of our Ty Montgomery is listed as wide receiver and he's a pass catching running back. That flies in the face of our avoiding zeros, but it's interesting.
I saw that. That's yeah. That's one where if I was okay. We are coming down to the wire.
I like Darius Slayton here the most.
Oh, look at that timing! Exactly who I was thinking as well. Yeah, I think he's my favorite.
I don't hate Richie James here.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I like Slayton there. Like, I just like that. Like, Slayton and Hodgins are probably the Giants I'm clicking the most. But I mean,
gives you Higbee correlation too.
Yeah.
So me with Richie James was drafting him a decent amount earlier. I do like him as well. I think just from a spike week being tied to that offense, I'm going to slow down a little until Hopkins signs.
Yeah.
Hopkins signs there, which it looks like that's I don't want to say likely, but one of the likelier. Then really all these peripheral wide receivers are probably going to drop down. But definitely a player I've got my eye on, want to see what training, what camp reports are. Would not shock me if he ends up as the I don't know, the wide receiver in two wide sets. I mean,
yeah, the third pass catcher isn't people acting like Sky and Tony are just like obviously the guy. I think Richie James can work his way in there too.
I mean, Tony had 7 snaps in the Super Bowl. That's a lot.
It's crazy. That's a lot. He had so many.
And Sky only had a touchdown because he stole it from Tony.
Yeah, and he wears number 24.
Can't. I mean, hey, Ty Montgomery, we're about to draft a running back as a wide receiver, so anything is up in the air. Okay, let's do a quick refresher.
Yeah.
TJ, let me know. How do we do?
I mean, I never feel great about stream drafts just because it always feels like, we're scrambling a little bit trying to talk. I think the biggest pivot and where we got away from what I usually do is the Najee pick. But also that was just a gross spot. I think we were kind of stuck there. He fell 13 spots over a full round in ADP. So and
that's third. Yeah, that's early round value.
Yeah. So that is the spot I'm going to do it. It throws a little bit of a wrench in our roster construction of what I usually do there. But, I think we navigated it fine. I like that I think we got a little lucky that some of these stacks kind of fell in our laps. I like coming in late with the Jacksonville combo a lot. After all is said and done, I think I'm pretty happy this is a 3 tight end team instead of a 2 tight end team.
Yep. I think it's completely fair. Overall, I mean, yeah, if you look at our correlations, the first start with just our team correlation, we got the Burrow, Chase, Higgins, love that. And then you've got a running back on the other side, McKinnon as the bring back, not bad. Then after investing a lot in the first stack, we take a value stack with Pitt, with going Pickett, Najee, and Deontay. Probably the two highest scoring players in that offense. Yes, I know, not a Pickens fan, even though Deontay had no touchdowns. But I think the core from a fantasy standpoint, and then the bring back there as well, we got the end Noah Fant, which, yeah, if we're between 2 and 3 tight ends, if you're getting a correlation and a better value, I like it. All right.
Yeah, I'm into it. I think we're going to win the whole thing.
I mean, hey, $1.5 million here, $1.5 million there. All cheers to that. You may even have to drink an IPA if we win.
If we win, I will drink as many IPAs as you want.
That'd be fun. All right, chat. Thank you for joining us. You were fantastic. I saw lots of nuggets being dropped in the chat throughout this too. So yeah, if you are just watching the stream, check out that chat. A lot of stuff there. Everyone else, it is Thursday. It is 3 o'clock. We are in June. Puppy 2 has just dropped. Cool format there. It actually mirrors the BBM as well, where there's going to be some prizes for the regular season too. So take a look at that if you just want to get some drafts in at a low price point. I'll be in and out of the lobbies. You will see me. TJ, where can people find you? What do you have coming up?
Everything is at 4for4.com. We are still very much launching best ball content. I've about 3/4 of the way through best ball series, which is focused on best ball mania, but it really pertains to any underdog draft you're doing. We are rolling out tons of individual player profiles. So we're talking about these player takes throughout the draft. We should have player takes on almost every relevant fantasy player coming out throughout the summer. On Twitter at TJ Hernandez, all of these random factoids and graphs and charts. That's where you can find most of them. I'll be there all summer and hopefully on a lot of these podcasts around the industry.
Love it. At TJ Hernandez, go give him a follow. I've also linked to him in some of my most recent tweets, so go there. For me, we are, I think, episode 3 of the 6-part podcast series we released this morning with Leone and Levitan. Check that out. Episode 1 was on the clock. That's the kind of most important one. We then go into the actual different tournament structures, and we'll end with some counterintuitive thoughts. So enjoy those. Enjoy the weekend, and I will see you all next week. I think Monday we've got a fun guest, special guest there. So we will see you next week. Enjoy.